And Jerry and Katie, you can go ahead and sit at the table if you'd like. You're going to be the first topic on our list as soon as we're ready with our technology. And it'll be important to make sure that your microphones have the green light on. That allows anyone online to be able to hear you. Okay, we're running back. Okay. Well, good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and open this board briefing at 2:02 p.m. We are happy today to have with us Katie. If I don't say it right, I apologize. I know you just said it to me.
Guthier.
Gauthier, and Jerry Spegman from Oregon State Parks and Manzanita. So we're going to talk today about the Ocean Shores vehicle access rules, and we're just going to jump right in. And so we would love to hear from you. Oh, wait.
I'm going to kick us off.
You're going to kick us off. Okay, Rachel's going to kick us off. Never mind.
They are going to be speaking more.
Okay.
So yeah, we were contacted by Katie a couple of weeks ago regarding OPRD's process in collaboration with the city of Manzanita regarding potential changes to the rules for beach access along the ocean shore along the city of Manzanita. Most of the area is within the city of limits of Manzanita, but there is some areas in that are unincorporated, and so that defaults to the county's jurisdiction. Under the statute, OPRD must seek concurrence from the local governments regarding these rules for vehicle access along the ocean shore. Attached in your packet previously sent was the letter from Director Lisa Sumption that does a really good job of describing what's been done to date. There were links that went to public comment if you wanted to dive into all of that. So the purpose today is they're going to provide a more in-depth presentation on what's been done to date. I think Jerry's going to provide some rationale on what prompted the city to bring this to OPRD. And then the board can deliberate on its support and how it would like to proceed, if any, with public input. You may recall when we went through the process for the beach closure at Cape Kiwanda, that was a little bit different with the county's rule because we were the only local government next to that part of the ocean shore, and we had extensive infrastructure, high use with the parking lot, et cetera. I also recall the commissioners not having consensus initially on whether it wanted to close the beach at that point, and so there was a lot of public input that the commissioners saw. We had town hall meetings, online surveys, we were tallying results of yeses, nos, maybes, and so there was an extensive public input process there, probably similar to what City of Manzanita may have done, to help the board, guide the board in its decision on what it wanted to do. So do you have some discretion on how much public input you would like to solicit in this process to help garner or determine what your support would be? But at this point, OPRD is looking for whether the county supports this rule or this change at this time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Katie and Jerry.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel. Commissioners, thanks for having us to talk just through the process and how I'm going to kind of go through the OPRD process, and then Councilor Spegman is going to talk about the reasons for Manzanita. So I'll just kick off with what this area is and then turn it over to the City Councilor. So under administrative rule, there's a portion of the ocean shore adjacent to Manzanita that's open for vehicle access between October 1st and April 30th from 7 to noon, and for boat launching at all times currently. So we were contacted by the city of Manzanita in December asking to look at a permanent closure for that area. And then our commission reviewed that and determined it was willing to open rulemaking to consider that request. So I will turn it over.
Sure. Well, thank you, commissioners. So I've been on the city council for 5 years, and this has been a persistent concern for a lot of our residents and visitors in Manzanita. But I'll frankly tell you that until this past fall, I was under the impression that it was not something the city could have a role in trying to bring about a change. We understood it to be a state parks issue, and that was generally what we told people who raised concerns. But the concerns were persistent, and at a certain point in time, I know our city manager became aware of a proceeding down in Lincoln City that I think the Lincoln City Council had initiated a rulemaking request to the state parks. And so we got a particularly persistent resident raising the complaint again in the fall. And at that point, it was received by a colleague of mine on council who brought it to the full council's attention, and we all agreed that if we had the opportunity, we would want to ask the state to look at a rule change. And I was tasked with bringing the matter forward and sort of being in touch with Katie throughout the process. So we discussed it at the November council meeting, again at a December workshop, at the January council meeting. In other words, we tried to put it out in front of the public as frequently as we did. It was on our agenda at 3 meetings, and it was included as an update in another 3 meetings over the course of several months. But we did pass a resolution at the January meeting, unanimously passed the council asking OPDR to, I got your initials wrong, I think, but
It's close enough.
close enough, asking them to open up rulemaking. And then after, I think it was in the February meeting, or perhaps it was the March meeting, you indicated that you would be seeking the concurrence of both our governing body and also the county's governing body before going forward with the formal rule change. So at that point, at our May meeting, we passed, again, a unanimous motion to concur with the rule change. And for us, I think the majority of the complaints have been about public safety and the safety of the folks that regularly use the beach. It's an interesting mix of people because we, as some of you in the room know, we have a median age in town of 66 plus, I think. So a lot of the folks that are on the beach on a regular daily basis are older folks, but we have plenty of young kids and grandkids running around playing Frisbee and soccer and softball on the beach. We have people from all over the country, but certainly all over the region who are there to enjoy themselves and are doing a lot of different things on the beach, which should not, we think, include having to be concerned about vehicles passing by. So the primary impetus for the requested rule change is just the safety of our users. We used to, obviously at a time when this rule was first initiated, we had a town that was hot in the summer and very, very cool in the winter. And I'm not talking about temperature. We just had a lot fewer people in town in the off season. But at this point, the off season in Manzanita really includes heightened visitation, certainly from Thanksgiving through New Year's, and then right after New Year's we have spring break coming at us, and that spans a 3 or 4 week period of time. We've got at least 3, maybe 4 3-day public federal holidays, weekends spread out in that time. And so in general, we just don't really have a true off-season. There's no doubt that we have many, many more visitors and people on the beach in the summer, but in the winter, there are enough people, and that's when, of course, the complaints arise, because that's when the vehicle access has been allowed. The other issues are environmental concerns, and those were addressed by several folks in the public comments. And then I think most compelling to me as a counselor is that we had, one of our police force members testified at the public hearing, and for years has been telling us that it's really, quite a burden on the police to have to respond to complaints during the off season. It's a real challenge to get out on the beach to confront the folks that are being complained about. The police have had difficulties getting caught themselves in the sand in the off season. Weather's never particularly good, October through April, so that's just another factor that makes it more challenging. And also the reality is that you have to, as a police officer, you really have to give a lot of thought into whether or not you're going to cite somebody and then spend a day perhaps down here at the courthouse trying to, prosecute that case. So for reasons of public safety, enforcement, the environment, this was an easy call for the council to ask the state to consider a rule change, and then it was certainly an easy call for the council to concur with the proposed action that the state is interested in taking. And one other thing I'd like to mention is, well, two things actually. There are some folks in the community that do gather firewood off the beach or wood off the beach to use as firewood. And there's a separate regulatory scheme that addresses that and has always been available to people to utilize. And there's a permit process in place to utilize that. And so this change would in no way hamper those folks from doing what they've long done. We don't think it's a lot of folks, but there's certainly been a couple of individuals that have let us know about their concerns, and those concerns are addressed by the existing regulatory scheme that's already been in place. And then the other thing is that we certainly are concerned about anybody who has mobility issues and wants to be able to get access to the beach, but can't easily access it without some kind of assistance. And I think our visitor center does a extraordinarily good job with the three chairs they have at their disposal, and they're well utilized and they're well promoted. And anybody who, for any reason, who can't use the chairs available at the visitor center still has an opportunity to get a permit. And the manager at the Halem State Park has assured us that he has over the years issued those permits and will expect to continue to do so.
Thank you.
And I don't know, Debbie, if you want to pull up the PowerPoint, I can show you the maps of the areas that we're discussing. I think Rachel sent those also, but it may be helpful to have a sense of where we're talking about. And then I will go over the process we did for public comment. So if you want to go to slide 3. This is the full, most of the length of Tillamook County. The areas in red are currently prohibited. In green, it would be allowed, and then we have the restricted, which is in orange. And if you go to the next map, it's a pullout of the area that we're discussing. Oh, one more. It's an area, the pullout of the area that we're discussing. So this area in orange would become red. And there's a blue wavy line right at the top, and that's really where the Manzanita city limit line is. Just for your awareness, I added that in. So then if you go to the next slide, I can give you a little bit about our process. Our commission approved opening the public comments in February at their meeting. We took public comment from March 1st through April 7th. We had a public hearing online on March 24th, and we received 72 comments, both in writing and during the public hearing. We have a website where people can comment directly on the website, or we take emails. So we've had pretty good response through our online system. And then all of the comments are posted on our website. We post them weekly to give people a sense of what the comments are that are coming in. And next slide. So the comments we generally received, we had 43 that were supportive, 26 comments were opposed. We also did receive a petition from some residents who just signed saying they were opposed. So that's where we have a petition of 102 signatures. And as I said, all of that is available on our website. Next slide. I thought I would just give you a sense of what we heard from people generally. And the numbers on this slide do not add up to the total number because people commented on multiple things, but this gives you just a general sense. Safety, as the counselor said, was the top concern, concerned about risks, provided examples of their experiences, and then concerned particularly around reckless driving and people doing cookies and things like that in the sand. Next, it would be around wildlife and environmental concerns, which were typical around concern about shorebirds and other nesting areas. Plover areas are already close to driving, so it doesn't particularly impact that. People concerned about noise, pollution, and just the impact to to the experience that they had when they were on the ocean shore. A recognition that crowds have grown and the area has grown since the driving was allowed, so concerned there. And then comments around accessibility and wanting to make sure that people with disabilities did have access, but recognizing the resources within the city of Manzanita for that, and our Drive on Beach permit process within the agency. And then generally a support for maintaining a public beach. And then next slide, if we look at the comments that were opposed, there were a majority of the comments were concerned around impacts to dory fishing and impacts to that type of traditional use. So that was the 20 comments, and it was interspersed in some other comments through there as well. Concerned that there wasn't specific data to prove a need to eliminate the driving, and then a preference for different types of enforcement or permitting, and concern about economic impacts to closing the ocean shore. And then generally, every time we do a consideration of changing vehicle access, there are people who just feel very strongly that they don't want to see that eliminated or limited because there's not a ton of places that you can actually access the ocean shore with vehicles. So next slide, I guess this is, we took in the report here, we do have staff recommendations. So we considered all of the comments that were submitted and are recommending the initial rule that went out would have just prohibited any vehicle access. The proposed rules that we're asking for your concurrence on would allow vehicle access for boat launching. So that addresses the primary concern in opposition was around boat launching. The city of Manzanita would issue a permit similar to a permit system that they do in Cannon Beach, specifically to boat launching. And it's worked in Cannon Beach, so we would continue to work with them if on that process moving forward. So this rule is unique in the statutory requirement for having local government concurrence. We've received it from the city of Manzanita and then are asking now for your concurrence. We have a commission meeting in June that we could have the commission review and consider adoption, or the next one would be September. So we're open to, and then the rules are effective upon filing. So the final slide is really just to let you know the request that we have. It would amend that specific rule and prohibit vehicles from Oswald West to Nehalem Bay State Park, except if they were engaged in launching of the boat, which would be by permit. And I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And I will ask my fellow commissioners. Commissioner Fournier, I know you had some, I know you had a lot. Okay.
I'll let someone go
Would you
first,
like
but I
to
have
start,
some-
Commissioner Bell?
Sure. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for your presentation and for the materials. I was on the board when we petitioned OPRD to close driving in Pacific City. So I remember that process, and a lot of the reasons are similar, and I appreciate that you've addressed boat launching, because that was my main concern in this conversation and in this proposal is to be able to support continued boat launching. And I agree that as I recall, our reasons for petitioning to close Cape Kiwanda were primarily safety, that Cape Kiwanda had become so crowded, so dense with people that it really wasn't safe, and people driving on the beach did it unsafely, and there was, drinking and driving on the beach, and, there had been some accidents, etc. And so I live in North County, so I see how crowded the beach in Manzanita is, and the same conditions apply. There are a lot of people using that beach. I thought that most of the beach access was the parks, Nehalem Bay and Oswald West and the city. So I didn't realize that part of it is ours. So that's good to know. It makes sense, you know, that the whole thing up Beulah Road isn't part of, it isn't within the city limits. Um, so largely, I am supportive for all the reasons that I've just stated and that you stated, that other people stated, and appreciative for continued accessibility, for the option for people who have access issues to get a permit. That's important. Boats, that's important to me. And I don't know that, you know, I'm of course more interested in my fellow commissioners' thoughts, but I am content with the public commenting. I'd like to look at the public comments on your website, and but it seems to me like there's been a lot of opportunity for people in that community to make public comment, and I'm content to look at these and not do our own at the moment unless my fellow commissioners really want to.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I have a kind of a unique perspective here. My first job was as a Cape Canaveral deputy. I was a Marine deputy. So I worked at Cape Canaveral. I will say the difference down there was the crowds were the vehicles for the most part. And I'm glad to hear about the boat launching as well. What's confusing me is it says boat launching, but then not wood gathering. I'm just wondering why. I want to make sure that because the Manzanita proclamation is clear that doesn't even mention the permitting availability. And so I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about Manzanita being the one that permits the boats rather than ORPD, which would be doing the wood and the handicap or disabled access. One of my concerns here is I've also patrolled the beach up there for over 10 years. I'm familiar with the officer that does not like riding the beach, and I'm also familiar with the other officers that don't have a problem with people driving on the beach. Part of the concern I have, and I think I'm inching towards supporting this as long as I can clarify some of the permitting issues. But one of the things that concerned me is some of the hyperbolic statements about this. I don't know, I haven't heard any numbers of actual complaints during closure times that proved to be founded actual complaints during the closing hours, not when it's not open, because that wouldn't matter, because if it's not open ever and people drive on the beach and cut cookies, they're gonna be breaking the law anyway. I'm a little concerned in that. I was also gonna ask about, I didn't see the mention of the petition. I think that had over 100 people against this rule change. Was that on the slide?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just calculate it different because we don't have I mean, they're saying that they're opposed, but we don't have the reasoning. So we just call them, yeah, we just call them out separately, but we do mention it.
Having responded to the reason why the wood gathering is important, not just for the wood cutting, because some people rely on that for their heat in the wintertime. Quite a few people I know they do that in the Dark Ocean side. So that's a concern that's clarified, and that's not, it's it's arbitrary. It's if you need wood, you can apply for a permit. You know the rules. Apply by the rules. One of the things that, by the way, we also all of Ocean Boulevard, all of Ocean is actually Tillamook County. The whole from Lanita up is actually owned by Tillamook County. So that's another reason why we have an interest in this. Also, anything that kind of messes with the accessibility of the beaches really concerns me. So I'm really cautious of that, although like I said, I'm probably still leaning. I think the city has a right to try to, restrict some of that. It's like coming from Massachusetts, I lived in a place that had fences that go right down the beach. Okay, so you can't walk. I was just back there visiting and I went for a walk and I couldn't go left or right. Cape Cod, there's chain link fences go right in the water. So when I moved here 30 years ago, I thought, my God, I can't believe this is a public beach. Tom McCall's my hero. Oz West, we have names of parks around here that are people that have cemented Oregon as being a public access beach. And I'm always afraid of the slippery slope as we start restricting, and we're doing it. We're doing it for good reasons. But I think it should be done very carefully and thoughtfully because it It is part of Oregon's history, which makes it amazing. 1913, it was a public highway, Oswald West made it a public highway. Of course, he was riding a horse at the time he made that decision. And then I think later, 1947, they changed it to a recreation area, but still considered a public highway, just like. And there are areas to ride vehicles. I've patrolled all of them. I patrolled Sand Lake. I've responded to accidents there. I've responded to people cutting cookies on Big Phillips Beach. Again, I keep going back to. I understand the reasons public safety. I just don't like when there's hyperbolic statements about all the dangers and all the things. There really isn't that many. As far as I tried to look and I couldn't find a bunch. And it's difficult because Manzanita is technically not responsible for the beach.
True.
So a lot of those calls, and I confirmed this with Manzanita Police, the complaints will come in and they'll be referred to Oregon State Police and then they handle it. Whether it's a fishing game person because they have a pickup truck that can go on the beach. So, and I understand environmental concerns. I was around when you could still drive north of Tierra del Mar to the Plover area, but so I think like just like with the recent election, like there's good reasons to vote for and against something, but we don't need to be exaggerating the situation. I think it's fine to see that. I get the same way about camping on the beach. When I worked, we have restricted camping. People don't know this, but you can camp on more miles in Oregon Beach than you can't camp. If you look at the prohibitions are limited to mostly in front of certain cities, Rockaway, Manzanita being two of them. Most incorporated cities, not most, North.
Actually, Paul, your mic is off too.
Oh, North Coast.
Waving at me, but you were talking loud enough.
I'm pretty loud. So that concerns me too. And I think that's a special thing too, that we just, as we still let these little things go, we should just be thoughtful of that when we make these decisions. And that's why I think being sure that boats can still launch it, because I've read so much of this stuff. I read all I appreciate the thoughtfulness you guys put into it. The fact that launching of boats is non-existent doesn't mean they shouldn't still be allowed to do it, in my opinion. Manzanita City doesn't have any boat launches. They're the state parks and then the county's boat ramp. So if those were to fail, it's difficult to launch a regular boat, but you can launch jet skis from the beach. And that's why I just want to make sure that we're still open for recreation for certain people. I always say, be careful what you vote against because you don't like it or you perceive it as being bad or dangerous because the next thing you come for is something you like. You may not like motorcycles on trails, but you like to mountain bike, but then there's a hiker that doesn't like a mountain bike. And so I'm always worried about that when I think we have to take everybody's use into consideration. So I guess what I'm saying is I would like to hear, one, would there be clarity that all of the exceptions that are permittable would be in, I guess I would ask that would be in that.
Written in the rule.
I think written in the rules specifically and who is responsible for that. And I would, if Manzanita is going to take on the boat launching, as Marine Deputy, I would like to know what your criteria is. Is it just someone has to ask, or there's certain criteria that you're going to set up sizes or types of boats, or whether they're commercial or whether, I think that those are important things because that is, again, restricting what currently now is unrestricted. And we're just adding layer upon layer of bureaucracy on something that, again, Oregon's beaches are free or supposed to, and we're taking that away. So we have to be careful, in my opinion. So I would ask that the wood cutting and the boat launching permits and the disabled permits and other permits. I know we let movies shoot there, and I think that's important for the economy of the area when we give permits for movies to be shot on the beach, for scientific research to be conducted on the beach. I know that those are things, perhaps it just has to be whatever is normally permitted or accessible through a regular permit would be a way of simplifying that, because I know there's a lot of exceptions for emergency vehicles, for scientific research, you need to go get a seal off the beach. So I guess, please.
I think you put out a lot of really good information that has a lot of questions in it. And I was remiss that I did not indicate we really had about a half an hour for this topic, and because we have another topic waiting and an executive session this afternoon. So I don't know. I'm gonna just kind of control the time for a minute here, if that's okay. I think you put some good questions out. I'd love to have Katie answer those questions because I think there were around permitting, what is allowed, what isn't allowed, how it's managed. That maybe you could answer, and then we'll see if we can tease out the other information you need.
When I don't need all my answers today. I just want to say my piece, and they can come back at a different time. But Please go ahead.
Well, I would just say that our commission, I mean, our agency and our commission agree with you that we really have to be cautious and balance recreational uses, that driving on the beach is a form of recreation, everything that, just because somebody doesn't do it, we're very cautious about making sure that all forms of recreation that we can safely permit and allow, we want to do that in the most open way possible. And recognizing that the history and tradition of Oregon is to allow driving on the beach, we take very seriously any change to that and monitor and determine that very carefully so that we're not trampling on people's forms of recreation. It's a managing recreational conflict and recreational use is something that our staff are very well versed in and do because they believe in recreation also. I mean, our mission is around ensuring that there's recreation for current and future generations. So we definitely hear you there, and I want to make sure that that point is addressed. Your question around permits, what I can do is we have a specific rule that describes the permitting process. So it would probably be the cleanest here if I just referred to that rule. And I can write up some language and send it to you and I think that we'd be totally, completely fine with doing that piece. The reason we were supportive of Manzanita issuing the boat permitting is because there's going to be a gate and they would have the best access to continue to provide that information. And it's a City of Manzanita gate, it's not an OPRD gate. So it's helpful if the city does that permitting process because they're closer to it.
Would they be following your rules regarding permits?
They would, we really would do it similar to what they do in Cannon Beach. So the city has the permit. The rules would be what's in the administrative rule. And we haven't really talked about, I don't know.
Well, I've talked to Cannon Beach. They have a very simple, I think, and straightforward permitting process. It's only for dory boat launching, and there's not much in the way of criteria. It's more about putting everybody on notice, who's out there, vehicle numbers, people numbers. They don't have a gate there at Tilvana that they can lock. We probably wouldn't, if we're going to be in the business of permitting dory boat launching, we probably wouldn't lock the gate because that would mean we'd have to have somebody up at 4 or 5 in the morning to unlock it. So we would discourage through signage and make it clear that, you know, the only persons allowed to access that gate would have to have a permit. But it's not particularly onerous at all on the fisher folks to get that permit. There's no charge involved. There's not a lot of paperwork involved. And although I agree with you that just because a right is underutilized doesn't mean it's not important, we are frankly banking on the need for permits to be minimal. That's been the history.
I think it will be.
I would expect it would be. So given the time that we have, and I apologize, I know that you guys were hoping to take this with our concurrence on the 18th of June, but I don't think that that's likely. Just given the questions and comments that we have at this point, I'm not sure we can move that fast. And I haven't said my piece. One of my pieces is I'm sorry that we didn't get brought in sooner so that we could have known when those public comments were. And I didn't hear anything about it until I got a letter asking for our concurrence. So I feel like we just got a little bit shortchanged on the process. And now I feel like the time is being pressed like we need to do this. We only have, I think, 2 meetings that we could possibly consider this prior to your meeting on the 18th. And I know that I'm gone for both of those meetings. So I feel like we're just pushing a little bit too hard. So I apologize for that, if that is going to really upset the apple cart for Manzanita and OPRD. But I just, from my perspective, I feel like there's a little bit more here that we probably need to talk about. Commissioner Fournier, I apologize, but I'm going to need to move us on in this session because we do have another two people to talk with. Would you be comfortable connecting with perhaps Katie and Councilman Spegman and finding out a little bit more of the details of what you were looking for, or we can bring everybody back for an additional session?
Yeah, I think one of the points to make is none of this is, if we have to wait till September, it's not going to affect anything because the rules are already in effect that you can't drive on the beach currently anyway.
That's true.
Which is what I mentioned. I think it was an email from you, but there was that kind of statement. So nothing's, if we had to wait, so we could.
It's currently closed.
It's
And
currently
So if it
closed,
were
so-
happening in the September meeting of the Parks Commission for that October timeline, that would be.
Yeah, that will work fine. It does make the notification of the public a little bit of a shorter.
I think we could do it
Timeline,
way
but-
before then, but I just, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the Parks Commission won't meet again until September.
Right.
But I have to say, sitting here, I feel a little bit like we're trying to.
And we don't want to rush you, and I want you to feel comfortable with the process, so we can make it work
Okay,
in
I think
September.
that would be great. So what I would love to do is to be able to have Commissioner Fournier get some of his questions answered. And then we can come back and have another conversation as commissioners at another board briefing. That way, because it feels unless Commissioner Bell, do you want us just to have all those answered? You could send them and they could, Paul could send them.
Most of
and they
mine
could
are
bring
answered.
them.
If most of mine are answered, so, but it's up to you, Chair. I mean, if they're gonna reference and permitting will be the same for those activities, and I guess, that's the biggest question I have. So,
Okay, so are you comfortable moving ahead? Because we can pivot. I
So-
just am feeling a little bit like you had a lot going on there. I want to make sure.
I
you
do have a
got
lot
your
going on there,
answers.
but they did answer the question, the main question they has. I didn't want to limit those currently permitted, which they clarified. It wasn't clarified before.
Okay.
So I will defer to your judgment on whether you want to continue. And I feel like you have a hesitation too, so.
My hesitation is just that we got brought in late and we didn't have the opportunity to, and I did go and look at the comments. I understand
You did too.
it's kind of, you're, half of the people hate you and half the people love you, no matter which direction you go, right? I do wish again that we had been brought in so that the county would have had a face involved in the public comment portion of this because the county is concurring. And it feels a little bit to me like we're standing behind Manzanita, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is also limiting the transparency of what the county might have wanted to be involved in.
And that might be my concern. I would defer to you in that if you think more public, we should have a little period for more of the county's involvement, the public. Because I honestly didn't know about this till I saw that you had it on the agenda. And so I wasn't aware of this, and then I saw a February 25th press release. So, yeah, I'm only 2 weeks into this, 3 weeks into this. So.
I
Right.
can tell you that as a North County resident, I was aware of it, and I wasn't thinking that we weren't at the table because I was thinking it was City of Manzanita. And so I think that people in the North County community were aware of it and had the opportunity to make public comment. So it's, yeah, I get your point that it would have been good if you'd known sooner. Yeah.
It would have been good because then we could have been present at the public comment and it could have been noted that the public comment was being taken on behalf of the county as well, so that it wouldn't appear again that we did not actually seek any public comment as the county. So I guess my question, fellow commissioners, is if we were to delay, would we actually arrange a public comment period, or are we comfortable with what they have and would want to move forward?
You're comfortable.
I'm comfortable because I think that we would hear the same things from the same people. I think
that's
they
likely.
had the
I think
opportunity.
that's likely, and again, I think my major concerns were alleviated with the permitting. So I'm going to, again, you've got to make the call.
At this point in time, it sounds like we can move forward. Again, I think I would still like to not feel like we've just crushed this. I think I would like for us to be able to put some information on our website or some form of piece that lets people know, get it on our agenda at a meeting when all three of us would be there. So if there are people who feel like they need to speak to the county directly, there is an opportunity for them to do that. I don't feel good about not having that opportunity at all. I realize we may hear the very same things, but I feel like we need an opportunity for people to do that, even if it is through just a press release that this is going to be on our agenda and the opportunity for people to speak to us there. And I think that's probably not going to happen before the 18th. So, Rachel, scheduling wise and with what I'm thinking,
Yeah, I'm thinking, first, I'm not clear, sounds like there will be changes to the language in the rule?
Yes, I can email you the updated, would be a staff recommendation. I mean, our commission still has to adopt it, but.
Yeah, so I think it would be good to have that revised language, and then you talk about it at a board meeting.
yes.
It's noticed with an additional press release, so that's your public input piece of it, followed by a subsequent board meeting where you approve the letter.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the 18th would be the soonest they could talk about it. They'd be available, all three of them, to talk about it in a board meeting in the revised language.
Okay, so I will send you the, and I do apologize. If we were to do it again, we would do that different. And
Happens.
if we have any future changes, I will make sure that we reach out to the commission
I
first.
appreciate
So
that. Our public doesn't, they just, feel, you know, it's part of what we have to do. Okay, so then I'm gonna let Rachel, you, and Katie start talk about this and figure out how to get it into our timeline.
Sounds great.
Sound good?
Well, thank you
Okay,
very much
thank
for
you
your
so
time.
much. Appreciate you guys both being with us today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we are gonna move on, and we have our next topic, which is the Colpack EDD CPACE presentation with Lydia Ivanovic, and I also see Sarah Lou Heath with us today. So if you guys want to both come up, you're welcome to come up to the front table. And I know we had a half an hour for you, so we'll try to keep this if we can to a half an hour. I apologize that we are starting late for you all.
No problem. Thanks for having us. I'm Sarah Lou. I'm the executive director here at Colpack. If you see me on my phone, I will just be taking notes on this conversation. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Lydia because this is her project.
Wonderful,
So,
welcome.
thank you. Yes, Lydia Ivanovich, Programs Manager with Colpack. I do have a presentation, some slides. Happy to get my computer or.
Work with Debbie on, Debbie, you have those slides, right?
It looks like she's opening them
Yeah,
now.
because we got a
Yeah.
copy of them. Perfect.
Okay,
She will run
awesome.
those for you. You just have to say next slide.
Thank you, Debbie.
Magic in the room.
So good morning, everyone, or excuse me, good afternoon. Sticking to the script. So we'll be introducing the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. It's a financing tool that we've been looking into. We've had several really fruitful conversations with our Board of Commissioners, both in Clatsop and Columbia County in the past several months. Through those deep discussions and workshop sessions, they are interested in moving forward in the adoption process. Likely will be a conversation continuing into this summer, maybe fall, but their continued interest has just made us want to continue this across the region because we do think this regional implementation is what will make this clean energy financing tool really strong for the North Coast. Next, please. So the CPACE program is a state level, so Oregon level legislative framework that smaller jurisdictions can then adopt into their own county code. And this allows for both private lenders and property owners to access a new form of financing that is one that is only supports energy efficient improvements or renewable energy installations into new construction or rehabilitation. So that component has to be in the design or construction plans in order to be accessing this type of financing. So in this way, when the county is adopting this program to code, it is in support of energizing the types of construction projects that have that resiliency and energy savings component. I'll explain a little bit more on what CPACE, how it's structured, and we'll be talking a bit about what is called a tax benefit assessment. Getting that term out now, nothing to be afraid of. So throughout this presentation, I'll just describe how Colpack, us as your economic development district, will act as an administrative capacity in this program, assisting with the implementation, the ongoing operations, and the convening of all the applicants to make sure that the county is fully divested in any legal, financial, or operational involvement in the life of the program. Next, please. So these are just some program objectives and design highlights that I want to bring to your attention, because this is just outlining basically in the county's role. It can leverage its legal authority to provide the community with alternative and renewable energy backed essentially development and vis-a-vis like economic development goals. This program does offer the opportunity to attract outside capital investment. So often CPACE financiers are really fluent with this type of project and bringing in their capital resources. It is increasing the adoption of energy efficient upgrades in commercial buildings and spurring ideally the development of housing projects. And it is bringing that new tool to our region in terms of residential development. And this type of research is what is exciting for Colpack to like bring forward to the Board of Commissioners. Next, please. These are different slides. Okay, so why? So I explained a little bit already about why CPACE, and don't worry, I'll get to the what, because I haven't really explained what it is yet. But again, why, as we're basically outlining what differs between assessed clean energy as a debt financing tool versus like traditional commercial debt lending. So the CPACE financing is all centered and determined based on what's called a benefit assessment agreement, and that is aligns with the actual improvements that are being made to a building. So when financing is offered to a property owner, it is based on the improvements that they can deliver to the community within their building. So that's how the commercial provider can offer advantageous loan terms. So this benefit assessment agreement, since it's based on the useful life of improvements, it can secure a much lower rate over up to 30 years because it's based on the entire property, which allows for, I mean, that's advantageous for also, which is often much shorter and like much higher rates. So it's harder to, access that type of development financing in our community. For the lender, what's their side? That's okay. You're getting a long-term stable cash flow proposition, like loan product for them. And I'll note that these types of transact deals are fairly low risk. Is actually a built-in part of the program is that both the property owner has to initially partner with their capital providers. So they already have to know the financer they're working with. So that means when someone's preparing an application for this program, they're already in conversation. The capital provider already understands the type of improvements that the property owner wants to implement in the design and construction. So they understand like the efficacy and the probability, basically the assurance that it can be constructed and that the improvements will be properly enforced. Next, please. Okay, back to the what. So again, the what is the adoption of the Oregon CPACE ordinance into county code, and what we've provided in not ahead of this meeting, just so it didn't overwhelm you, but there's a suite of documentation that walks through the program, including model language of the ordinance and responding resolutions, should that be appropriate for the board. The exact language that we've provided as an example of how to structure this program is actually from Hood River County. We researched all the language across the 5 counties that are currently participating in this state program, and the language and goals outlined in economic development provided by Hood River, we felt like aligned with most with our region. So that's what we've been recommending, and resultingly have been approved by our partners in Clatsop and Columbia County as well. So we've gotten the opportunity to kind of allow them to review the language to see the alignment with their objectives in terms of development or their comfortability with this program. And so that's been really helpful, and which is great when we are presenting this to you. We're hopeful that, of course, we'll remain in dialogue with what alignment the board wants to see in the code, but it has some North Coast vetting, shall we say. But following the adoption, the commission can then completely actually divest themselves from administrative, financial, and legal ties to the program, because there's 2 important documentation I'll highlight. One is the CPACE program guidebook, which completely walks through the legal relationship between the property owner and the capital provider and the county, as well as an agreement. It's called the Benefit Assessment Financing Agreement, and all that contains language and indemnity clauses around protecting the county from involvement in the ultimate financing structure and transaction. So it assures that.
I'm going to jump in here and say what she means by that is the county does not have to accept any payments between the capital provider and the business owner. The benefit tax assessment does not You know, it's not a traditional TIF or a URA. You're not giving up any
I have
taxes.
no idea what you just said.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not like a traditional tax increment financing tool or an urban renewal area. Um, It sounds like that because it's called a benefit tax assessment, but that's just the benchmark of the new value of the property. And that is recorded with your tax assessor. And that's the only place where the county plays a role in this once you adopt the legal framework. And so we'll take questions on that. I just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
in there.
Well, great segue next. So this prefaces everything Sarah Lou just said just concisely. Again, the word tax is insofar as this type of program can only be enacted, implemented, and facilitated through a partnership with the county assessor's office, but that is as far as the word goes. Um, So the tax benefit assessment, as Sarah Lou said, it's based on the expected use and benefit, the savings of the energy efficiencies within the building and the value of the property. And so that's a value that is assigned by the capital provider, and they work with the assessor's office insofar as they actually are the ones in the contract, they take over the assessment process. So they're doing the recording, they are covering any fees associated with recording the assessment in the tax assessor's office. And then it's through that assessment, that financing amount, that benefit amount that they've deemed that the improvements are going to bring to the property, that then they create a lien on the property. Again, that lien is transferred from the county books through a legal agreement and in the paperwork for full ownership by the capital provider. That lien is essentially what is structuring the entire financing deal. And it's from then when when the capital provider has that lien, that is marking its transition into a completely private transaction. This is now a privatized loan financing agreement between the property owner and the capital provider, where they can craft those kind of competitive, terms and rates that were explained a little bit previously. Similar, the lien that is owned by the capital provider is the mechanism for enforcing repayment, but also they, like a traditional loan, they set their own fee schedule. All of this, which completely bypasses the assessor's office. Again, it acts as a typical loan between the borrower and the capital provider. So those are often structured through annual payments, just so it aligns with other taxes on the property, but that is not actually in direct alignment with like the assessor's office. So the one feature I'll mention in this benefit assessment and lien placing process is that because it is a benefit assessment, it does, when this lien is placed, a CPACE lien is placed, it automatically assumes senior priority. So any existing mortgage or debt holders on the property have to assume, they consent, like it's part of the paperwork, they consent to having a subordinate position when that CPACE lien is placed against the property. And that in some instances, that is something that Colpac is aware of, and we've been in discussion with other counties on how they educate property owners around this, how CPACE financiers work with interested property owners in this program to ensure that that this relationship is explicit and can be properly navigated. Next. So this is just a rundown of roles and responsibilities of the main actors in the CPACE play. You'll notice basically the county commissioners were given the opportunity to speak with you all today to kind of go through the implementation process. We'll help explain the benefits of the program and then ultimately guide through implementation, through talking through all the documentation, and then ultimately assisting with the adoption of the program. The only action item that the county continues to have in the program at all is executing the final agreement when an applicant is deemed completely successful. And I say successful as in Colpac is the one that ensures that an application is completed to its entirety. So anything that's brought before the counties for approval has already undergone all the due diligence and quality assurance and insurance that the energy efficient deliverables will be approved. So the property owner is responsible for ensuring that their energy efficient or seismic resilient improvements are feasible, and that actually has to come during the application period. So they work with the contracted certified engineer and architect to sign off on the improvements that they plan to implement in the project. And so Colpack, again, in our role, we're excited about this program to monitor the economic development goals that it can provide for our community and continue offering capacity in program administration, reporting, and the marketing of the program. Next. So this is just a close-up slide of it. What I was explaining before, how we fit into this conversation. So bringing the program to fruition by aiding in your decision and any TA requests and getting adopting the ordinance, and then continued program implementation. This outreach we've been able to have and all the conversations we've been able to have with our fellow county partners have been through a House bill. So we've been able to pursue new development financing ideas and bring them towards our partners, and our ongoing capacity in being a program administrator would be supported by a 1% fee of the total financing of the project. Again, that's this fee structure mirrors every single other program administration costs that all the other counties in Oregon have set up. So we feel that it is appropriate also in our similar bandwidth to rolling out these services. So again, any fees associated in the benefit assessment process are borne by the applicants. Next. Okay, so basically I've given you one last time to be blown away by the program implementation process. These slides will be made available, so this is just like a circling back to the overview. And essentially this slide is all underpinned by documents that ensure that the property owner and the capital provider, they're doing all the due diligence, ensuring that the energy efficient and sustainable improvements in their buildings will pan out and be delivered for the community. I'll note that with the lien transfer, this is another kind of provision to highlight. If default or foreclosure on CPACE financing does occur, again, the county does have several legal provisions that protect them from involvement in this. Since it is a private financing agreement, the transaction or scenario of a default would unfold in a typical bank foreclosure process. And again, the repayment mechanism, as Sarah Lou explained before, is such that the payments don't go through the tax assessor's office, and as might be typical in assessed property, but it does go straight to the capital provider as established by the benefit agreement signed upon everyone. So this presentation has been fairly technical, but I do want to underscore at the end of the day, this is a development financing tool that is focused on bringing sustainability, resiliency, and energy efficiency to the development landscape for our community, for housing, for our historic downtowns. So offering like a new way for property owners to get that last mile in funding with a value add for our community members. So following this presentation, we'd love to invite the Board of Commissioners to consider adopting the CPACE program and continuing this conversation and reviewing the model ordinance documentation into county code. Next. That's me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Paul's already looking at me, so I'm gonna make a quick comment and then I'm really gonna hand it to Paul. So I was just going to say, I think 99% of that went right over my head. So I'll own that right up front, that it wasn't entirely clear to me overall. What I will say is that I have heard of the CPACE program, and I have heard of it specifically in the context of housing development. So it's not something that I understand the mechanisms you just spoke about, and I see our assessors online with her hand raised. So she probably actually understood what you just said, as did perhaps my fellow commissioners. Just to say, CPACE has been brought up in the housing world that I'm familiar with as a positive tool. So, Commissioner Fournier, did
No,
you?
I was just gonna say, I understood about 98%, 0.5%. And I was wishing that I had Parker and Sarah and Cassandra all sitting here together for this, because I think this great presentation, Parker would get 100% of it, because it has to do with housing development.
And I will say, we have discussed this with Parker and his compatriots around the region. And it's one of the reasons that we have looked at this program for a couple years for other opportunities, specifically around historic rehabilitation and seismic, because seismic is included in this. But it was the ability to bring in lower cost financing to market rate housing that seems to be the bugaboo nobody can figure out. And so I do know that I haven't spoken with Ms. Abshire about it, but I know that Parker is supportive.
Perfect. Rachel?
Yeah, I would just add, so the purpose of today was just to bring this topic before the board, but obviously there's a lot of work with staff that we'd like to do with everyone that you just mentioned. So I would recommend as a follow-up that we work with community development, the assessor, Parker, et cetera, and bring forward a recommendation to you all on what staff may want to do with this program.
Okay, thank you.
Cassandra have something?
I was going to check with my other commissioner first. Commissioner Bell?
I think this is exciting. I maybe didn't follow 100% of it, but quite a bit. And what I got out of this is that it's an alternative funding solution for market rate housing, for workforce housing also, for any kind of housing.
Really for any type of housing. And I will say, any type of housing except single-family
Okay.
dwellings. It does need to be multifamily.
Commercial.
Yeah.
Okay. And also for seismic, that's very exciting. There are very few opportunities for seismic upgrades and historic, downtown historic renovations. I think there's just a ton of potential here. So I'm very interested in the topic.
Thank you. Cassandra, you did have your hand up. Was there anything that you would like to share?
Yes, hi. I was going to say what Rachel just said.
Okay.
So a meeting with all of us would be great. I'm just going to ask one question because I have 10 of them. So I want to be clear that the assessor's role, we're not collecting anything, we're adding it as a lien, correct? Is that what you said?
Correct.
We're not collecting anything for the loan, but our role is to add it so there's a lien on the property.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the property developer will be responsible for the costs of the assessment for putting together the agreement. It should only make it to the assessor's office when it's been approved through the CPACE program, meets the benchmarks, their terms, rates, conditions approved from, between the two parties, and only then would it go to the assessor's office for recording and the commissioner's office for approval.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. Well, I have a variety of questions that I'm gonna let sit there because I think there's staff work to be done that will probably answer those questions for me. So I'm not gonna ask us to get into that today. I think for me, one of the underlying questions I would love to have the answer for when we all do come back together is, I understand the county seems to be we have to have an ordinance to make this possible. And ultimately, there's some agreement that we are a signer on, but we're not responsible for anything, which seems very weird. And then the other thing is, what is the actual, why does this work? If we have no part in it, other than to say in our ordinance, okay to do it, why does this work? So Rachel can work with you all to answer those questions. So when it comes back, there's a little bit more, because it sounds to me like this is a deal between the property owner and the developer, and that we shouldn't need to have any part in it, should just work. So there's a piece there. So if you would just have that question answered when we come back, that's all.
Well, I can't not answer that question for you since we're here.
Okay.
I would liken it to an enterprise zone where the jurisdictions kind of have to approve that enterprise zone and what rules. And then when somebody makes a deal using that, the county just says, yep, I see your conditions. Those match our goals. Best of luck to you.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the role, as well as adopting the ordinance just to make it possible.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
And I just want to confirm, it would be Parker, Sarah, Absher, Cassandra, and Rachel. And Mr. Sargent, are you the counsel for the?
If you need me to, Rachel,
I think we bring counsel in later.
yeah, I think if you work with Rachel as the point person, Rachel can help us identify all the right people that should be in the room.
Okay.
That just keeps the communication very clear and tight. Okay?
Thanks for
Thank you
having
very
us.
much. Thank you. for
Thank you so
coming
much.
today.
see you.
Do you want us to turn these off, or there are people coming up?
That we'll have yeah, we have a next round, but thank you. Good to
Take
see you.
care. See you.
Okay, so then I believe that our next step is to move to our executive session. You had one other topic, Rachel. Do you
It
want
can
that
wait, it
since
can wait.
we're- Okay, so we will move to our executive session and council will tell us.
Yeah, it's under ORS 192-660, sub 2, sub D, to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations.
Okay, thank you. I was in the public meetings training yesterday. We have no media in the room. This is one that they could have been excluded from anyway, even if we did. And there's no conflicts of interest that need to be declared prior to going into this meeting. Correct.
And we
Was there one more question I was supposed to ask? I feel like there was a whole list of them.
will be coming out and making
And we will not be coming out and making decisions. Thank you very much. So that would be the other part. With that, we will recess this board briefing at 3:07.
2-minute bio break.
They recommended making those admonitions before.
They did.
required.
I took a picture of it and I meant to have it so I can make sure I hit everything.
Part of our restructuring.
Right? No, because I was like, oh. Okay. Okay, we will return to this board briefing at 4:41 PM. You will see that everyone else left before I was closing the meeting. So thank you all who stuck it out to the end. Thank you for being with us, and we'll close this meeting at 4:42 PM.
Figure if anybody watches, I would have a joke for the end of the ones where we come out, just to encourage people to come back. Oh.